we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking. And here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations, and thank you for all the support, and we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Karis Project podcast. This is episode 34, America Rising, the Controversial Court. We have with us Gina Medico, and she is an advocate in the state of Connecticut in the family courts. She's a paralegal, has a background of experience of dealing with the complete treachery that goes on inside of the family courts, survivor of abuse, and had to go through her own situation and is dealing with some of the divisions that are going on with parents who are fighting for their children. And we have our guest host today, Stephanie Henson. Um, Gina, you want to kind of introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I started Sweet Corner Girl, a nonprofit to assist others who have um, been in the judicial system where they are facing false allegations for domestic violence. And I try to assist those who may or may not have an attorney who feel like they're not being represented appropriately and their position is just not being put forward appropriately or truthfully. So I do try to help organize documents. Sometimes I help assist them with preparing documents to file on their behalf. They file on their behalf. Uh, and I will attend court hearings and to stand with them as an advocate while they're going through the process. I don't I don't speak in these hearings unless I'm asked by the judge to speak up for the person. So, but I do go to court appearances to assist them.
All right. And so, sorry, some of the, what are some of the challenges that you've seen over the last, you've been doing this for about 25 years or so. How long, what have you seen as some of the problems that are arising with the family courts and like the parents who are trying to get their children? Like,
Well, unfortunately, uh, I haven't seen much change in the past 30 years. I experienced being kept from my children in my divorce when I was filing for divorce in 1995. Um, I, I was not aware that the courts would come after me hard, as if I had done something wrong. When I was a victim of domestic violence, I did speak out about it. And I felt that my attorney did not put my case forward. It was more like whatever he said, they were going along with, and it just made it very difficult to ever seem to have an equal playing field or equal grounds when it came to um, seeking custody of our children or even just shared custody. At the time, it was more of a cutthroat. I'm going to through the process, I'm going to make up every false allegation. I'm going to embellish events to make them appear worse than what they were. And I'm going to make sure I get custody of the children. And, you will still continue to be under my control, whether you get to see them or not. And the courts basically granted that to him. Uh, my husband had a drug and alcohol problem, and the courts didn't seem to care. But the fact that I had gone to counseling prior to my marriage over childhood trauma, that made me less, uh, that something was wrong with me, that I couldn't care for my children, even though I was working in a very difficult type of job. I wasn't a difficult job, but you had to have I was working for an attorney. I was working for attorneys, and I was working at one time for a senator. And so, I mean, I couldn't have carried on complicated legal matters if I had a mental illness that they were purporting that I have, that all of a sudden, materialized during the divorce.
well, I see a lot of the times it's when they have their minds made up for whatever reason or the other. It doesn't
Sure,
matter what you do, right? Like, I mean,
sure.
for example, like I graduated from mechanical engineering, which is one of the most difficult things to do, and I had a premature daughter and so forth, and had to spend a lot of time going back and forth to the hospital that demonstrate good time management skills and all of these things because I'd have to drive like it was 3 hours to a different
Mhm.
city from where my school was to see my daughter and deal with all of that. And they were like, "Well, I have poor time management skills and I cannot complete simple tasks." And I'm like, "But I just graduated from mechanical engineering. I mean,
Right.
like, that's obviously false." But you see these types of things that are happening, and perjury is acceptable in family courts where that's a crime. And especially when you're looking at the even though it's not a criminal case, when you look at the impact that it's going to have on a child, they should be using very near the same level of what you would do in a criminal matter, because you're dealing with the liberty of a child and
Mhm.
also the liberty of the parents. And so due process should be the most stringent in these cases.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
There needs to be more investigation into these cases, and they're not doing enough investigation. And when you do point out the perjury, where you can prove it, where there's contradictory statements, you're completely ignored. They don't care. They just ignore your statements. They don't ask you enough questions, and they're making decisions on our lives. I think it's extremely inappropriate, and this is a form of child trafficking.
right. And if you look at the family law rules, they do require you to look at the evidentiary rules. They do require you to look at the general rules. It's not like they're a case all themselves where they have their own rules and you follow a different set of court values. It's not like that at all when you look at the Florida, the state statutes and stuff. So it takes on a life of its own in most of these cases, and it's usually pitting one parent against another. And you when by the time I came to the conclusion that I wanted to end my marriage, I was done with the fighting. I didn't want to fight with him. I just wanted to end the marriage. We share our children. I was under the false belief that we were going to get 50-50. And I was totally blindsided when he came after me with the same vengeance he came after me during our marriage with abuse. And it really did take me off guard. And what put me at even a further disadvantage was the fact that my attorney wasn't even assisting me. She wasn't protecting me. And against Florida law, which is where this happened, my records were released to my former husband about childhood trauma, and he should never have had those records.
How
And
how did he obtain them?
because he went, there was a 10-minute hearing. I have the transcript. It's really pretty awful when I look back at it. But he went into court. We had a deposition, my deposition the day before, and I was asked if I had gone to counseling, and I said yes. And he also wanted a waiver, and I said no. I said I believe it's confidential, and I don't believe that you're entitled to that information. And sometimes my attorney would object, and sometimes they wouldn't. And the court had a pamphlet that they gave out for dissolution, and it's clearly said that the court clerks are not counselors. Divorce is hard. Please go seek counseling during this time, and it will not be detrimental to your case. So of course I was going to seek a counselor because he was vicious to me. He was abusive. He was, harmful. He was just doing everything to just harm me. He got a delight out of making me uncomfortable. He liked to embarrass me in public. He liked to embarrass me in front of others. He wanted, to frustrate every aspect of my existence, and it was just really too much. And there was a lot of things that were seen by others that were involved in the court process, and nobody stood up and stood up to him and said, "Stop it." It was never, it was just like, I think that there would have been less angst on my part and anxiousness if somebody said, "Look, I see what you're saying, and you're harmful, you're verbally abusive, you're psychologically abusive, and we're not going to let you do it in front of us." Nobody did that. Not one person did that. It was almost like, "Oh, well, that's just too bad that you're experiencing that," and you know, um, he's just not nice. And it's like, well, I've been experiencing this for the past 4 years in my marriage, and I'm done with it. And so now I'm filing for divorce, and I expect it to stop. I don't expect this to go on for another 10 years, which is what ended up happening, because he did obtain custody of our children. And I was given scant visitation every other weekend and every other Tuesday. And it was really, really difficult. And during the process, sometimes I would not have an attorney. And allowing me to see my children was always up to him. The judge would say, you need to let her see your children. And then he would let me see them one afternoon for a few hours. And then I would go for 5 or 6 weeks or more without seeing them. And then during that time, he was calling me, he was saying different things. He was just very vicious, and the courts just didn't seem to care. He could just do whatever he wanted and say whatever he wanted to me.
Yes, and this is where you look at when you see things that are going to this extreme. There's a reason for it. There's like, and this is a pattern that I've seen happen very often. It's generally because for some reason or the other you're being targeted, and the courts
Mhm.
are just using a means of doing this. Because in my own case, my ex-wife was extremely abusive. She assaulted me while was holding my little daughter. She stood in front of me in a church, ready to like she was like motioning to punch me in the face while I was holding our daughter sitting down, and
Mhm.
like I mean, lost her mind publicly that I had to call the police inside the church. They had to stop the whole hearing and everything, and my daughter was just freaking out, this little one, right? And she was attacked my oldest daughter as well, and had all of these things going on, but yet I was the one that was completely demonized. I was arrested. The judge directed the police to arrest me going into the court when I was going against the police in one case, and then the custody hearing then wiped me out, cut me off from my daughter, my little daughter, like took the house I was living in, everything, gave it everything over to my ex-wife, said she could sell the house, everything, settle divorce, first appearance, while I got taken away and strapped to a bed and drugged against my will,
Sure.
where I could have been killed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then that was according to them a law. Everybody was a lawful order of the court, and then people around like, oh no, if you just do this, I'm like, they tried to kill me. You're gonna tell
Mm.
me the people that tried to kill me are gonna go and be fair? And it's like
Yeah.
the same case. They're abusing you, right? And they're allowing him to abuse you. Use your children as a means to abuse you. And they're
Mhm.
like, oh well, that's just too bad.
It's just
Jump
the
through
way
these
it is.
hoops, and you'll get what you need. No, you won't.
No, you just end up frustrated, more frustrated, or you just end up, totally empty. You can't move on because you're just rocked to the soul, and every ounce of energy is just taken from you by this vicious person that nobody seems to want to stop.
Well,
Well,
and
that too. And I feel like too, like when you're in those situations, like you're doing anything to get your kids back, so you'll comply to anything they say, and then they
Exactly.
use things against you, and it's like, well, I'm just trying to do what you're telling me to do, so I can have my kids back, because I'm scared right now. You are coming after me illegally, and you're abusing me mentally, physically, all these different ways, and they allow this to happen.
They do.
this
They
is
do.
this is one of the reasons why they'll go after women more than men, because more men will say go kick rocks and they'll figure out something else, whereas
Hmm.
women will be more likely to try to go through and comply to get their kids back. A lot of men are like, it doesn't matter what I do now, you're not going to comply, and they'll be like, I got to figure out something else,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so forth. And the guys that do this, they have a lot of psychologists that do this, and they understand how they've got this down to a science, and it's
Yeah.
very, very, very disgusting because I see this
Mhm.
pattern everywhere. Every
Yeah.
case that I look into, it's happening over and over again. You have to sit down and
It is.
begin to
I
realize,
was shocked.
yes, that they're
I was
criminal.
shocked that it was still happening 20, 30 years later. And I'm like, wow.
It
So
was
that's
getting
how I got.
worse.
It is getting worse.
It's getting worse at this point, because even my partner with his situation, like his wife was the abusive one. She was smashing TV. She smashed an Xbox. She's having an affair with his father. She's taken the kids at this point. One of the times that she went to come pick up his daughters, his daughters didn't want to leave with her, and she was drinking and driving. He recorded the incident and sent it to the police that she was drinking and driving, and that she was throwing his daughter in the car seat abusively. And nothing happens. Andrew goes to jail. My partner goes to jail, and nothing happens to her. She's able to now collect child support. Is not even allowing him to even speak to his own daughters. It's been over a year and a half at this point. And I've contacted the police on his behalf. He's contacted the police. He was arrested at gunpoint with my daughter because of her lies to law enforcement, which if you read the complaints, she used phone calls and text messages of him trying to call his daughters. And she used the same text messages twice in 2 different complaints. And the fact that they just electronically sign off these warrants and have him arrested, it's very concerning the way our system is working. It's not a justice system at all.
Who wants to call the police? I don't. I will. I don't want to call
the police at all. But, sometimes you feel like you have to because you feel like, okay, I want this document and I want to do the right thing. Because you feel like it might help you. But then they don't do anything about it. And it's like, and then I called to ask if they would facilitate a phone call between Andrew and his daughters. He says, we don't get involved in court stuff. Well, then why are you arresting him for phone calls and text messages? If you don't get involved in court stuff, then why are you going off the order of protection that should have never been approved in the first place and having him arrested at gunpoint? That is extremely traumatizing, not only for Andrew, but for my daughter, for myself. And that's why I started speaking up, because it affected my life. But yeah, it's really disgusting what I'm seeing happening. I didn't realize how bad it was. I thought for sure Andrew had a case and that he's going to get through this. Now I'm saying no. I mean, what is going on? They are putting the children with the abusive parent. This is not okay, and it's terrifying.
When I was going through this 25 years ago, 30 years ago now, I was allowed to call my children, and this was arranged by them. They told me what time I could call my children, and I was allowed to call them. We didn't have FaceTime back then, or cell phones. This was on a landline. And I was allowed to call my children at 8 p.m. And I would call at 8 p.m. and it was always a problem. They were sleeping, they were studying, they were eating dinner. There was always a problem. And there's been times when they would call and they would just hang up the phone. And so I would call back, and they tried to have me arrested. Well, no, they did. Excuse me. They did have me arrested. I wasn't hauled off in handcuffs, but there was a notice that I had to appear, and I had to speak with a prosecutor. So the prosecutor, called me, and I went and met with him, and he said that he interrogated me, wanted to know why I was calling them and letting the phone ring. I said, well, I'm trying to contact my children. They're letting the phone ring. They're not picking it up for me to talk to my children. And I showed him the paperwork. I said, see, it says right here that I'm allowed to call my children at 8 p.m. every evening. And he hangs up the phone, or or have a problem with me calling my children and speaking to my children. And the charges were eventually dropped. But one of the things that they do is they want to have you have a criminal record. They want you to be incarcerated. They want you to either be ready to end your life, or they want you to do something, so horrific that you are incarcerated for the rest of your life. That's funny to them. That is hysterical. That's the kind of stuff they want to do.
It is. And if you go back, and I did, people who follow me next, I did a thread on this. I also interviewed a lady named Anna Toledo at targetedjustice.com. You should go back and watch that. I demonstrated that, like, what they're doing here is that they're following the FBI COINTELPRO program. And what you're seeing is targeted harassment, gang stalking, whatever you want to call it. But if you look through the steps of what they do, this is to a T what happens. You're getting gaslit. You're getting the justice. No matter what you do, it doesn't matter. And they disregard it. They're using fraud, their deception, their character assassination. They have people in the community that come after you and so forth. And you get isolated, and they put you in this position so that you can either destroy yourself, end your life, or you will, or if you're in a mental health hospital, get incarcerated, snap, and do something where they controlled opposition, where they can control what you're doing by driving you off the edge. You go in there and go ballistic and something, or if you're a high priority target, then they just assassinate you, but they have plausible deniability. Sure. And this this is what's being done against the American people and here in Canada, Canadian people, and this is done through the Department of Homeland Security. It's gotten better since the creation of this because without the DHS and the fusion centers, it it was a lot harder to do. But now they could easily expand the program with the technology and so forth. And this is why we're
Mhm.
seeing an increase in what the
Mhm.
types of things that happened to you in the 90s and what happened to me in the 90s getting more on a wider scale as we move into this technological era.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, one of the reasons why I named Sweet Corner Girl was because when I was in, uh, my ex-husband was trying to get me removed from our house. He had taken the children. He has gone to his parents. I really didn't have, close family ties. My grandmother had recently uh, died, so I did not have the support of my grandmother. So I was pretty much alone. And the home that we purchased was from funds that I received from my grandmother's estate. So I felt that I should be getting the home and, I wanted to share our children. I really didn't want to keep our children from him because I experienced that as a child without a father. And of course, I came with all that ramifications of being a child that is without their father. Something's wrong with me because I don't have a father. Anytime there was anything happened, it was, oh, because she doesn't have a father. No, that's not it. It's just I adjusted. I didn't really know my father, so I knew what it was like to be without a father. So I was, it was just something that I had adapted to. And so I had a really hard time, when I was in the court hallways before a court hearing when he was trying to have me removed from the house, when he was saying to me, by the time I'm done with you, you're going to be working the street corner. And so that's how Sweet Corner Girl name came about. Another thing that he would like to do, and this was in front of the Garden ad litem, would say stuff like, by the time I'm done with you, you're going to be in a mental hospital. And, he was doing things like sending me dead rose petals, cutting out letters from a newspaper and sending me notes. And he didn't hide that they were from him either. But when I went into court because he was violating the restraining order, the court didn't care. Didn't care. Did
Yeah,
Did
not
you
care.
have a restraining order on him, or did he have one on you?
Well, he tried. He took a restraining order out on me first. Okay, to get the
Okay.
children. Okay.
Okay.
It was never put into. It went for 2 weeks. And I stayed away from him. He called me constantly. He came to my work. He was doing all kinds of things, and he told everybody in town, including my attorney, that the reason why he filed it was because he wanted me to be afraid to leave him. He did that because he wanted me to be afraid to leave him. And he made up all kinds of things that just weren't true about me. And so it didn't go into final. Okay. And then my records were released by the same judge. Okay. And he was using them to absolutely torture me. Things that happened to me as a child, nobody knew except a therapist. And so he would say things to me like, now I feel like I'm locked in a basement. I feel, you know, he was using stuff that happened to me as a child as if that was something that
But
was
you were doing
happening
to
to
him,
y- y-
trying to do
y-
it for reverse psychology.
yes.
right. It was also triggering me because
Yeah.
because it's like I was under the impression that my records would never be released. My attorney told me they were not released, and she lied to me
Weren't
up
there
until the
HIPAAs?
oh
Yes.
yeah. Actually back then HIPAA was not it,
a thing?
1995 when Clinton signed HIPAA.
Okay.
Therapy records do not fall under HIPAA. They
Y-
are
Oh,
not.
they don't.
y- y-
They
y-
fall under separate statute.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just wanna take a short commercial break here. We'll come back and talk about this on the other side. Just one sec.
Sure.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillow is only $14.98. Queens, $18.98. King size, only $1 more. Body pillows, $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Yeah, so just anybody need a pillow or any of the MyPillow products.
I actually have one.
Yeah, so you can go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 1-800-845-2942 and use the promo code Karis. And yes, spend over $100 and get 2 pillows absolutely free. All right, so back to the what we're talking about here. So when you look at what's going on in the courts and how they're running this, they're torturing people. They're torturing you and so forth, because what you're seeing here is a pattern of abuse, an escalating pattern of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And like my oldest daughter, she got taken by Child and Family Services. They never gave any reason at any point in time. No matter what I did, I was wrong. I went to places, did the things that they asked for, and it didn't matter. Like, I was conning people and everything else. So I'm like, I can go con everybody except for you as a social worker. You're trying to tell me that and so forth. Even had a conversation with one of the ladies doing an assessment, and I explained to her that some of the dialect of English that I speak at home is slightly different than what you speak normally. And some of the
Right.
sayings that I got from, for example, my mother and my grandmother, they don't have the same meaning here. She's like, well, there's only one English and I'll take it how I see fit. And I said, no, that's nonsense, because
Mhm.
you go to the UK, lorry is somebody's name, but that's a truck, right? We call it an elevator. They call it a lift. There's differences even in the way
Mhm.
that we speak,
Sure.
even in the same country. So like, that's nonsense. But they do whatever they need to do in order to accomplish what they want, which is to disadvantage you. From the
Mhm.
get-go, what it sounds like is that you were put in that position for them to abuse and groom you, and then continue
Right.
this targeting and using your children as the way to punish you for
Mhm.
whatever reason they had. It's
But here's how I
obvious,
see it too. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
it's
You
just
finish.
it's not a legitimate reason, but they have some wrong reason in their head.
It's for their entertainment.
Yeah, well, here's another thing too, is that I feel like when it comes to our entire system, when it's the government, the medical systems, the school systems, all of it, it's a human trafficking system. And what these courts are doing is they are creating more trauma for us, which then they make you use their services, their mental health evaluations, their programs to make you go through. It's a money making
Mhm.
business, is what it is, and they are purposely trying to harm people so that way you have to use their services. And yeah, you pay for it out of your own pocket. The court system is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they are abusing people. It's a human trafficking system.
I just want to touch on something that you said there, Gina, about your ex saying that he wanted you to work on the street corner
Mhm.
as a result of this. This is a large reason of what this is about. This is
Exactly.
trafficking and slavery. They were putting you into the position so that you would have to sell yourself to survive.
Exactly.
And
It's exactly the whole reason why I named it Sweet Corner Girl, because to bring awareness
Good.
of that.
I like that you did
You
that. I
know?
like that you turned something negative and you made it something positive. I like that you did that.
if
Thank you. I was going to say Street Corner, or just name it Street Corner Girl, but my daughter's like, Mom, why would you name something that was said to you that was so horrible? And I'm like, you're right. But I really didn't know what else to do. And I just kind of like sat on it for a few days. And then it came to me, Sweet Corner Girl. Let's change that whole narrative. and stop having women, seen in a negative light.
In,
And I feel like you were put in a corner. So that's a perfect name for you. You know what I mean? I mean, you're put in a corner with your situation, so it
Exactly.
fits.
this is a system of slavery, right?
It is.
And so what they're doing, what you're watching here is that they're breaking the men that would normally go out and protect the women, because protective men know that not only do they have to protect their families, but they need to protect their communities, because if their communities are not safe, then their family is not safe, right? And
And the
so
country, I mean, even as a country, if you look at other countries, I mean, if we were to go to, if we were to have to go into a situation with another country right now, how are our young people going to fare? I mean, most of our young people are kind of in a lost. They're kind of lost, and then a lot of it has to do with not having, either one or the other parent involved in their life. And
See,
yeah, exactly. I mean, how are we as a country when we do this to our own people, our
well,
own communities,
it's
our own children?
it's not even just through the family courts. It's also our jobs as well, because I have divorced parents, so I know how that affected me. I have another partner who had divorced parents, but my other partner, his parents were together, but his father was an attorney, his mom was a realtor, so he had an absent father who's constantly working all the time. And he actually mentioned that he doesn't know how to play with kids because his dad never played with him. And so you're not
Yeah.
seeing that emotional connection between the parents. They have completely, what I believe God is the emotional connection between the energetic connection between people, plants, nature, all of that.
Right.
And that's completely being stolen with our kids. We force our kids into a school system where then they're separated from their parents all day long. Their parents work all day long, so they don't want to play with them because they're exhausted after work. They want to take time for themselves. And then the kids have bedtimes at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So it's like by the time you get done eating dinner and doing homework and doing whatever, you don't have any time with your families. They are completely destroying the family life and destroying what we are as humans.
well, and
Sure.
they also need to have a lot of men that come up and stand up, because the men and women roles are very different, and
There.
men need to learn from men, women need to learn from women, right? Like, I
True.
mean, I don't know how to teach a woman how to be a woman. I'm not a woman. Like, I don't have the
Yeah.
experience. And same thing conversely, a woman can't teach a man to be a man because she doesn't have the experience. Obviously, there's some basic things you can't, but like, I mean, there's certain things that you just don't understand. Like, I don't understand what a woman goes through when they go through puberty. No idea. Just like a woman can't describe it. So there are those things that you need to learn, and then what we do in the family, because the roles of the father and mother are very different, absolutely necessary in order to do this, because our world is the way that it is because our families are out of balance, they're just off
Sure.
kilter, right? And
Well,
sorry, go
sure.
ahead.
If you look at the laws in 1969, prior to 1969, it was really difficult to get a divorce. Not only that, but we're just coming out of a patriarchal society where women were property. Women and children were property of men. And, we at first adhered to an old English law, and it was called the Tender Years Doctrine. And what it was a child under 7 years old was believed to need to be nurtured by their mother. So when there was a split in the family, and it was usually the father who would want the split, because he had the control to say, I want to end this relationship. He would do it oftentimes by just bringing another woman in the house. So when that was, when there was a split like that, the woman would get the children up until the time the child was 7, and then the child would be given to the father to work in the fields or work, in however the father saw fit, because women and children were property. And it takes about 50 to 200 years for normal mores to leave, and traditions to leave a society. And so when a lot of these laws that came into place that women were no longer property of men took a long time for them to change, people's minds to change.
There some what you described, I'm not disputing, but what some of the terms that people use for them are not correct. First of all, the reason the term like patriarchal, what you're describing is actually not what a patriarchal society is. It's the furthest thing from it. What people have then done because they've deviated from what it actually meant and put tyranny in that place is why people are saying it is what it is. Because if I go back to the Bible and I read what the patriarchs did, for example, Abraham, when he did wrong, God told him to listen to his wife. What did Abraham do? He instructed his family righteously. He looked after them. He did what he needed to do to create the circumstances for their success, and he did what he needed to do to protect his family. That's what it's supposed to be. What you're saying that your wife is your property, that's not what it was supposed to be. The idea,
Correct.
the idea of why the child goes for up until 7 with the mother and then out with the father is because of the way the development of the children are. The mother is the one who has to lay down the foundation of the character
Correct.
in the formative years, and usually by the time the child is 8, that's where it's kind of cemented. After that, the father's role becomes larger because then they start setting the hard boundaries based on what the mother has done and prepare them for the outside world. This is
Sure.
why you're supposed to work together and so forth, because the father's role gets larger as the child ages, especially when they're a man, to go out and face the world.
Sure.
And then they teach the woman on what they need to have to look for in a man, because their father is showing them the type of attention that they need and all these types of things. So they're designed to work together. The reason why they
Right.
principle behind them making marriages hard to dissolve is because men and women are wired very differently. And a man should be helping to make his wife feel good and safe and secure. But women are
Correct.
more emotional on their decision making. Men are more loyal. Men are less likely to initiate divorce. This is just the way that we're constructed. But if a man's abusive, he shouldn't be in that situation. But if we made it a little bit more difficult in that manner, people would think before they make those decisions. But because men became tyrannical by putting God out of their lives, that's the natural conclusion. And who wants to live under a tyrant? So then they're like, okay, well, I've got a means for you. And the solution to the problem that they created was always worse than the problem itself. And then this is how we got there, because it all started by making men tyrannical in their homes.
Right.
And they were traditionally not, but they were for a long time. And then they brought that to where it is. And so,
Right.
yes.
I think a lot of that stems from. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of that kind of stems from our natural ways of living. And I know that people have not agreed with me on this, but I feel like our natural ways of living is really truly living off the land and growing our own food and growing our own crops and working as a community together to come together to raise our families. It takes a village to raise a child. And now you're seeing all the separation and segregation between children and adults and all these things happening where it is creating very toxic men, where it's like they were forced to leave their families to go to war, for whatever else, and they were separated for those long periods of time, which done, it's psychological warfare. It is created, like you said, a tyrannical man, psychological warfare where we don't even know how to act as humans anymore,
Right. But we did have laws where women were not allowed to go to certain colleges. We were not to have certain professions, and that changed in the 80s. And that's how soon it was. It was, we weren't allowed to have our credit card when, in 1964. We were not allowed to have a mortgage unless we were co-signed by a father or a brother or a husband. And so, a lot of those laws have just recently changed, back in the 80s. And so when you have that restriction, and then women all of a sudden become part of the whole workforce. I mean, there's really not anything a woman can be denied to do now that a man can't do. Whether she can do it or not, that's a different story. Same with men. They're, taking on more roles in the household and what have you out, which is, where we are, why we are where we are, because, there is not that traditional role for the women and the traditional role for the men. And so, when these laws were changed back in 1969 to make it a no fault, which is basically across all of the United States, all states have a version of no fault. And that's where, most your reasons to dissolve the marriage are irreconcilable differences, or um, what's irretrievably broken. And but you know you would and that was to take the conflict out of the marriage, out of the separation. Some parties don't, they shouldn't be together, and so there's breakdown of the marriage. And it was designed so that the children wouldn't be exposed to that conflict, and there wouldn't be the fighting over the child. It would be, okay, you're going to have a household over here and you're going to have a household over here. And we had in 1974 the CAPTA Act, which uh, instituted what the definition of a child was, which is a lesser of 18, lesser of the age of 18. And whenever there was a problem within the family, whether it was the child being the problem or, anything else, these programs were supposed to be developed. Agencies and places were supposed to be developed, such as welfare or whatever else. And that was to assist the family, not to come after the family. That's not what the intentions of the laws were created for. It was, to make it better for American citizens to be able to either stay together, to work out whatever, problems there are. It wasn't as, to be
Being
this.
used to destroy, now it's being used to destroy the family is what's happening.
Yes.
Right. It says it clearly in the code.
Just
Mhm.
for some people, they didn't think that was the intent, but for a lot of people, um, that knew what was going on, that was precisely the intent. When you create it very easy to dissolve a marriage, then you can have people come in with bad intentions in the marriage to begin with and exit it to destroy someone. And this opened the
Right.
door for that like crazy. And this was the intended result, that was something that wouldn't have been apparent at the time that it was done, but it was calculated that this would become the outcome because they wanted to create more chaos for people. So if you had easier to get out of a marriage, then you can send somebody who was a honeypot into the marriage, destroy it, and walk out very easily without having to give any such reasons. And then the abusive person, who is a tyrant, can lie, cheat, steal, say whatever, throw it all on the other person, destroy you in court, and exit. And that was the likely result. But because we're running up on time here, I wanted to touch on something that we had discussed previously. You talked about having issues with other people within the family court, or people who are parents who are getting you know attacked and so forth, and suffering about the mothers groups and the fathers groups that are separated, and the issues that you had with that. You want to kind of just touch a little bit on that, what you're experiencing with some of the you said with the women's groups that were doing things that were
Well, yeah,
detrimental to other
sure.
parents.
Well, I reach out a lot to try to collaborate with others, to work with them, because I think that the more we are in organizing together and uniting about these issues and finding out what the true issues are, the better off we are. Sadly, I have not found that much. I mean, I have found it in places here. One place that I did find that, there is a common ground and we want to work together to solve these issues. But a lot of times what I do find is a lot of these groups that are seeking to change laws are actually seeking to change laws that are going to be more harmful to the groups that they're looking, to champion. Um, and they're not coming out outrightly in saying that a lot of times, which is, you think that you're supporting one aspect and you're actually supporting something totally different. You don't even realize it. And so, uh,
No, go ahead.
so one of the things is, when we're passing new laws, or we're supporting new laws to be passed, do we really know what we're supporting? One of the things that came, I brought came to my attention was Caden's Law or Grayson's Law.
Yes.
It's a group of people who are they go to each state and they look for someone who had a child who was who lost its life from a parent during the middle of a custody battle. The child lost their life,
Yes.
and they're trying to promote Caden's Law and stuff like that, so that. And one of the aspects of this law was that CPS can come into your house and take your child if police are called, and and mostly that harms poor families or working class families, and so people that are supporting those groups don't even realize that that's what they're supporting, because they don't make it clear what platform they're supporting. They don't support 50-50 custody. They want to have a court battle. They want to have certain aspects, as factors as to why somebody should not see their child ever again. And, it seems a lot of these can be fabricated, which is what I found more so than not. And it really does go against the whole best interests of the child. I just did a blog on that just the other day, on how the breakdown of the best interest of the child was first instituted to be. It was supposed to have like a checklist of all the things that would make a court look at a parent to be the primary parent. But a lot of states, I think there's 40 states now who are going with the 50-50 default, which I think is really what it should be. And the only time that a child should be away from another parent is under exigent circumstances. And it's like Stephanie said earlier, these cases need to be investigated.
Yes.
I say it all the time.
Yes, we do. We're running up on time here, and I know that you got to do so. This is something that we should come back and have a podcast about specifically,
I would love
because this needs to really be discussed at length. But I just wanted people to kind of get an idea of what was going on and so forth, because it's creating more problems than it's worth. And so before we wrap up here, do you want to tell people how they can help you, where they can reach you, and that sort of thing, Gina?
Sure. Well, I do have a website, Sweet Corner Girl Corp. I do have my phone number posted so that if anybody needs assistance, you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you any way I can. I'm hoping to do a fundraiser here coming up in the next couple of months, because I would like to help persons, and I have helped persons who just need their phone bill paid, who need a new tire for their car, just to help them get through this process, and because there is absolutely no assistance for people who are trying to leave, or who all of the funding in most of our domestic violence organizations, they go for training and they go for counseling, or research, which I believe counseling and research go hand in hand. And I do want to point out too, a lot of states still have the criteria to get a restraining order where you have to have been threatened with physical harm, or you have to have been physically harmed. So you might hear a lot of talk on the internet about, get a restraining order. But you really, really, you need to find a safety plan prior to making any plans to leave, because chances are you may not get that restraining order approved. So you might find that the person has been tipped off, and then you might find yourself in a situation like I found myself in. So you really need to plan if you are being abused, physically or emotionally. Some states still don't recognize emotional abuse or mental abuse as a factor in getting a restraining order. So you really do need to try to protect yourself as best as you can. And you certainly do not want to step off a person that you're going to be leaving and taking the children. You don't want to be doing those kind of things because that's going to be tipping off that person that they're going to be they're going to be preparing themselves up to go after you as hard as they possibly can. So
All
I just wanted to say that.
all right. Thank you for coming. I'm going to close with a prayer. I know you
Thank
have to
you.
go, so we'll see you again the next time. And for those of you guys who are watching on Lindell TV and so forth, you'll see the next part with me and Stephanie discussing stuff in tomorrow. But on the stream, you'll just keep watching. I'm going to close here with a prayer, and thank you for coming, Gina.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Lord, I thank you this day for the work that Gina is doing and others like her, and help the men and the women that are trying to protect their children to get the help that they need, and most importantly, to help protect the children who are suffering the most in this situation, and bring the men and women together to rebuild their churches, their communities, and their nation, that we can have some peace and safety for the children, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again next time.
Hey everybody, Keisha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin.
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's ilk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the J Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government. and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Karis Project podcast. And me and Stephanie, we're going to discuss some of the stuff that we were going over in that podcast, because there was a lot that was going on. So I'll give you your first crack, because I've been talking too much anyway.
I am thankful for her for what she's doing. That is a lot of work to go out and help other people. And then what she's experiencing too with the other women who are just, they don't think they realize what they're doing when they try to pass the laws, or they don't believe in the 50-50 custody. I think that's very dangerous. Kids need to be with both parents. They need to have a relationship with both parents. Parents should just be able to come together and work together. I don't know why we've become so just evil and vile towards each other. And it just makes me sad to see that they are bringing this petty behavior into the courts, and towards it's harming their children. And it's harming also the other parties who are involved. So.
Yeah, this whole aspect of what they're doing in these courts to destroy people, they want something. And like when she said that her ex was saying that you need to be on the street corner, this is the desired outcome, right? Like when you're looking at it, for example, a man that comes in there, and you watch this happen to men, and a lot of women didn't see the outcome of this, and they would put in the case of an extremely bad man that deserved to get destroyed and needed to probably go to prison. And then they would just allow this to happen all the time. So when people saw this, they would assume that it was just some dirtbag guy, but that's usually not the case. So the guy gets half of his money taken, right? Then he has to pay child support and all these other things on top of losing half of everything that he has,
Yeah.
right? And then it incentivizes making it easier for you to get out of divorce. It makes it
Mhm.
easier for a woman who's got bad intentions to go in, get to this guy, have a child with him, and then completely ruin him, right? And
Mhm.
then the men are like, I don't trust women after seeing all of this. Why should I get married? Because this is what can happen, and they're promoting this. And the women
Mhm.
who were benefiting, who were getting destroyed by the men that they were having tyrannical, well, they saw this as an out, and they were being under duress. And when you're under duress, you don't see things clearly. You
Yeah,
don't.
you say vile things. Yeah, you say vile things. And I know I've seen this with my partner. I mean, he played professional hockey, and his partner, I believe that his ex wife, personally, in my opinion, I don't know her, I've never met her. I'm not going to speak for her, but just the things that he's explained about her and her behaviors, it sounds like she sought him out for his hockey career.
Yes.
Even when she wanted to, she actually brought up traveling with him and moving to Wales with him. And he said she came out with garbage bags. Didn't even have a suitcase. She came out with garbage bags to live with him. And I'm like, what? And so he bought her a suitcase and did all that. And she didn't even tell him she got off birth control. She just got off birth control, got pregnant. Apparently, they had a situation happen. And they had their 4 daughters, and she just kept getting pregnant. And then even after they were separated and he had a new girlfriend, his dad had convinced her or Andrew to bring his ex-wife on this trip with him after his mom had passed away. And she was trying to have another baby with him. They're not even together, and she's trying to have another baby with him. And now she's going after him. She's stolen his kids, and he's forced to pay her $1,500 in child support as he has $800 to live off of for the month. I mean, it's insane what they are doing, not just to fathers. It happens to mothers too, but this child support and spousal support, I think, needs to be done away with. It's unfair. If you are in a relationship with somebody, figure out how to make it work when you end it. Unfortunately, the whole spousal support thing, I think there's plenty of jobs out there now where there should be zero reason for spousal support. Women want all these equal rights. Men want all these equal rights. You have to figure out how to build your own success yourself. And I think the system is not having people take accountability for themselves. They're
Well,
making the other person take accountability for them. And that's where I see this system it needs to be completely reformed or done
it,
away with.
it's like, for example, in my divorce,
Mhm.
my ex-wife is the one who initiated the divorce.
Yeah.
I was going to school, university,
Mhm.
at the
Mhm.
time when she initiated the divorce. I ended up paying child support, even though I was in school and didn't have the
That's crazy.
financial means to do so. And under the
Yeah.
circumstances, when you do things like that, she would have been the one to have to pay for my school, to pay for me
Mhm.
to do this, because I was doing this for the betterment of our family, so
Yeah.
and so forth. And then I wouldn't be the one paying child support, but the judge went ahead and disregarded all of this. And then the house that I was living in and everything else like that, the police went ahead
Mhm.
and said that I left and I moved to Calgary. And I was like, that's not the case. The court
Yeah.
were involved with it. They forged court documents that I submitted and all of this to do this. And so with what I did, this is one of the reasons why men are more likely to document this than women. And then with
Mm.
me, the level of the documentation that I did, like I was talking to a guy, I have millions of pages of evidence. I have thousands of hours of audio and video evidence, substantial. Most of what I put out, and one
Mhm.
person was saying that it was over 700,000 pages publicly, is not even 3% of the evidence that I still have that has not
Yeah.
even been put out. Like, this will just annihilate people, and
Mhm.
then other people can bring their cases along to this and see that it's
Mhm.
following the same pattern. And you don't need to have the ridiculous level of evidence that I have,
Yeah.
because I've already started to put cases together and show a pattern. This is why
Yeah.
I get the most suppression, because I've given a very clear set of events and a template, so to speak, that people can demonstrate what's happening to them. And this was necessary. It was
Mhm. That's what I
necessary.
appreciate. Yeah, that's why I appreciate you do this podcast because I mean it's getting people's stories out there. And we're all noticing our stories have very similar like situations happening within the court. There's a lot of perjury taking place. There's a lot of just petty behavior taking place, and the courts are allowing this to happen. They are having too much say in our lives. And I think it's great that we're coming together and saying, like, here's this case, here's this case, here's this case. I mean, we need multiple cases coming together where we're saying we need a major reform. This needs to stop. It's damaging to humanity with what's happening.
Yes, and what you're seeing is that the children are being left in the most abusive situations possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And this is the purpose. And one of the reasons why it was, and this is why people need to go back to way things were, like you touched on, the way our lives are very different than they were. They're very, very different, because if you go back to, like, say, the mid 1700s anywhere in Canada and the United States, the life that we were living then, or even going to the mid to early to mid 1800s, very different. We didn't have such a high urban society. Rural societies are better. Even if you're in a city, a smaller city, like these massive cities that they have that you can pile into for 15-minute cities, that's not the way we were designed to live. That's where cesspools of corruption came, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
me and my partner talk about too is that we need smaller communities. There's just too many people compiled into areas, too many energies, everything just happening. You have people working together that have bad intentions that come together, and I think it's really unhealthy to have these 15-minute cities and these larger communities. We need smaller communities to help one another.
And yes, like, people would be self-sufficient, and, like, this is where people start to look at, like, things critically. Like, you even say in the Bible, they told them not to live in cities. The reason why is the same reason. Because why? Because you have more corruption. But the thing is that in Israel, the way they set it up, everybody had their own plot of land in the countryside. You could never lose your property forever. Even if you were stupid, you could lose it for a time, but you get it back. That's so that your family can have an inheritance in which to sustain themselves. And just because you were stupid, your children shouldn't pay the penalty for your stupidity.
Yeah.
But your house in the city, you could lose. And
for sure.
But the point is that self-sufficiency in having your own land to be able to grow your own food and so forth, and then what you didn't you traded with your neighbors. Then you would purchase things that you couldn't get in your own community. And when we were doing that, there was more accountability, because if you screwed over one of your people in your community, nobody did business with you, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having somebody in some office tower halfway across the world that'll never see your face that is stealing your money. Well, there's really no accountability. And if they're making money from tons of people all over the place, there's not much you can do about it, and little guys get squashed out. So we need to go back to accountability, seeing a person face to face, that type of stuff. That really needs to be dealt with. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
We need to go back to that. And also, that when you handle the dirt, that there's a chemical that your brain will release that happens under no other circumstance. We were meant to put our hands in the dirt, right?
Well, that too, I was telling my partners that, like, right now we have these major cities where you have the sewer system, and everything's being recycled. Everything is being recycled. The chemicals we're drinking in our water. I have a theory that when we, like, the stuff that we release out of our body, like, feces and urine and all that, I believe puts nutrients back into our soil, and it tells the soil what our bodies need to create, like what it will create vegetation for us to consume that will help heal our bodies. Just as so with a mom, a breast milk, I don't know if you know this, but a nipple is a sensory for a baby's saliva. The saliva tells the mom's body what to create, and the mom's body will create those antibodies for the child to receive the proper nutrition or medication that it needs to heal, or antibodies to heal. And I think that that's how we are supposed to be working with the earth, that we use the bathroom outside, we bury our stuff, and vegetation will grow where we are putting our stuff that exits our body, you know? And I feel like this whole system we have is, between the property taxes, the homes that we live in, you can have those taken at any point in time. I worked at a law firm, a foreclosure law firm, and I became very interested in this because I noticed that there's a lot of hospital liens put on people's homes, and people were writing letters like about how they're going through cancer treatments and they're dying and all this other stuff. And the banks still just come in and take their homes and leave these people homeless. And I was like, this is not okay. Like it was a matter of right and wrong that I was seeing. And that's why I became so passionate about my beliefs and everything else, is that I was seeing something that like, this is not sustainable for humanity. This is destroying humanity.
And this is the one thing, and I sit down and say this. Well, just before I get into this, I always like to say that he's an engineer because he designed everything to work together. Right? Like what you're talking about, the saliva from the baby that will trigger what needs to be done from the mother's body to properly nourish it. That didn't happen by that's not random. Sorry.
Our bodies are beautiful. When you research how our bodies work and how nature works, that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. And I'm like, wow, there is a reason for everything. That's part of the reason why I left religion too, is because I feel like they focus too much on God being an external him. And I just feel like you can call it Father Time, God being a Father Time, but I don't think God is a person. God is nature. God who works through every single one of us. We are all interconnected, just like the trees connect with each other underground. We are all connected with the earth, with the electromagnetic fields, nature, all of that. We definitely are,
Just for me on the aspect of designing things, I know that God is extremely more intelligent than we are in order to, what you're describing is just in like what you were talking about with the baby and the saliva. That takes that's insane on how that works and how precise you have to be in order to have something like that work. That is beyond human capacity to do. This is what I'm saying. It just, regardless of whatever you think, you have to understand that God's a hell of a lot smarter than we are. If you think otherwise, you're out of your mind, because for us to design things that are nowhere near as complicated takes so much time and effort and so many minds. And then you get something that works just pretty much flawlessly. And like, we can go on about that for hours, but I mean, at the end of the day is that we need to do things that work for us. And this thing that disturbs me a lot is how much this slavery has come into. And when you're putting people under duress, and they created the circumstances for this, like going into the industrial age, changed the way that we did things, and they had to do this. So they put the educational system to indoctrinate us, take us from the way that we were living into herding us into the cities, so that they could get the measure of control and all of this. This is we need to go back. But then you start coming down into this family court and this whole thing, and the breaking up of families and the no-fault divorces and all these things. Well, then what did you just create? More single parent families and single mother families. Single mothers are the most vulnerable people on planet Earth. They are, and we the most, and we get the most backlash. I know for me, I'm so thankful people have judged me, because when I got married, my husband and I lived in Hawaii, and he was supposed to be getting deployed overseas. So I chose to come back to live back in Minnesota, and he went back to Ohio. And I chose to stay with my dad. I didn't know how long I was going to stay here for, but I'm so thankful I live here as a single mom, because I have had men stalk me. I have had people judge me. I've had people make accusations about me that just are not true. And I'm very thankful that I've had my dad here, especially with me and Andrew's case going on right now, with the accusations and the CPS threats and all that. I'm like, well, try to threaten CPS. I live with my dad. I don't know what you can come after me for, right? Like, I have a witness here who has been around and has seen me raise my daughter. I've started multiple businesses. I have worked multiple jobs while being a single mom. And people are not aware of like how much work goes into being a single mom. And then you're responsible for all the emotional stuff and everything else, the physical raising of the child by yourself. And it's really hard. I didn't realize how hard it was until I went through it. And I used to judge single moms. How come you couldn't make it work with a dad? Whatever else. And now being in that situation, it's really opened my eyes, where I would like to start something where I can help single moms out with raising funds with homes. It's just not affordable. It's not affordable
for any single mom to be living right now without taking out loans and credit cards, which creates more stress. And that stress then is projected onto the children, and it's harmful. It's really harmful for humanity, and it's psychological warfare, what's happening right now with us and our children and everything going on.
Single mothers are very, they the way that they're treated is bad, and this is where we need to go kind of back to a little bit more traditional um situations, right? Like
Mhm.
back in the day, they if you went and slept with a woman, you were going to go and get married, because you look at the consequences if she has a baby and she's left alone. If the
Mhm.
baby is left alone and is fatherless, that child's outcomes is going to be detrimental. The woman can lay down the foundation of the character, but she's not going to be able to do the work of the father, especially if it's a boy, to prepare the boy for the dealings with other men in the world, because she doesn't have that experience of being a man. Like a
Mhm.
father can't experience, like teach a woman how to be a woman from that experience, but he can teach her what men not to be around, because he knows what men are like, right? Because a man has to go around men that he wants to go and strangle, because you're a predator, right?
Mhm.
And can help them do that. But this is where you always, ideas, even if the parents split up, they need to be able to work together, but you want to
Yeah.
make sure that you can get to the point to make better decisions on 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 how to do this, like how to get there. But at the end of the day, when the Silver Moses was there, you can't say, well, you should have did this, because you're there already. So what do you need to do? You need to help them so that their kids don't go down into the path of being prey to predators, because if you have to work all day, look after your kids, you're just not going to be able to do that. And because physically speaking, women on average are weaker than men, and they're going to
Mhm.
not be able to take that brunt. And then you get a guy that comes in and says, well, I'm going to help you with this and do this thing, and the women are happy, and then the next thing you know, they're doing something
There's
wrong,
Yeah,
right?
they still. I feel like as a single mom, a lot of men have definitely tried to sell themselves to me, and now I can see through it. Now I can. I mean, like their actions don't match what they're telling me, and I feel like as a single mom as well, I've been preyed upon by a lot of men because they think, oh, she's a vulnerable single mom. Like she can. And I've had men who don't have a lot of money that I've paid because I was a hard worker. I would pay for dates. I would pay for things like that. Where it's like that's not our responsibility. We should be going. I think that men and women should be going half and half, since both people do usually work these days. And half and half isn't always financial. The women should provide if the man is going to go to work, the woman should provide the home, right? Creating the home, doing the laundry, doing that stuff. Not saying the man can't help with that stuff, because they should help a little bit. But they're also tired from work. It's not doable to raise kids and to go to a job and to do all that stuff. It's causing disconnect between moms and between the parents and the kids.
Yes, and they should also look at the fact that in a relationship, like, yes, the man should be the one that provides, but the woman should be prepared that if, God forbid, something happened to her husband, that she should
Mm-hmm.
be able to help. And they're like, some women will be like, "Oh, well, I'll just get up and leave him." I'm like, that's really not the way
Yeah.
that works, right? Because God forbid, what happens if you had an accident at work and he's off for a while, right? Like,
Mhm.
and these types of things. This is where we need to like start looking at those kinds of situations, because in our society right now, good men are under attack more than anyone else, and it's
Mm-hmm.
that silently, because the only way they can continue to go after the women is by keeping those men down.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Yeah.
and and what the lady was talking about, how the mothers were, some of those moms groups were trying to go ahead and get these laws. They don't see
Mm-hmm.
the end of it, and they don't
They
want to
don't. Yeah,
talk.
they're looking at them right now. They're looking at them right now because here's what I notice about a lot of moms, and this is what I noticed with my own mom, and I kind of noticed with myself a little bit being a mom, just naturally. My ex husband does have some anger issues, and I was willing, as a Christian woman, I wanted to work through everything. Like when he said he wanted a divorce, I sent him a cute video I made. I mean, I tried to make it work for my marriage, and now I'm so thankful that he left because he was verbally abusive. He would yell at me, and the way he would talk to me was just like very scary sometimes. And so I did worry about sending my daughter off with him because his patience, he doesn't have a lot of patience. And so not that I wouldn't let her go with it. He wanted to bring her to, his family does like a camping thing throughout the summer with all the kids or whatever. And he wanted to bring her with. And I said, would it be okay if I came with, at least for the first few days, to get her comfortable and acclimated? Because he's last time he saw her was probably about 2 years ago. And he'd only see her like once a year. He would never call to talk to her. She didn't know who he was. And so as a mom, we do have these fears, right? Sending our kids off when we know our kids best, but these dads don't. I will say as a mom, you do get a little more selfish when it comes to parenting time because, again, you do know your kids better. As moms, we have this like telepathic communication with our kids, and we do worry about who's going to hurt them. But at the same time, we also have to release that and surrender and just know that whatever our kids go through, that's what is meant for them. It's meant to, whatever bad things they go through, it's going to help create strength. Just like for example, I see a lot of moms, helicopter moms, who don't, like when their kids start running, oh, don't run, you're going to fall down and get hurt. Well, let your kid fall down and get hurt. That's how they build strength, is pain tolerance, through pain tolerance, So I do see that issue with moms where it's more of just a fear thing, and we're allowing our fears to control us. Even in my partner's court cases, right? She just projected her own fear. I'm scared he's going to do this. I'm scared he's going to do that. And I think you had that happen with you where she just had to say, I'm scared he's going to do this, right? And that's taken as truth rather than it being the actual truth. All they have to say is that I'm scared. And the court is using that as like all truth,
Yeah, yes, and like there's a lot of other factors that go along with that. We'll have to actually end up actually doing a podcast about this altogether by itself because it needs to get addressed. But I mean, we need both aspects of the masculine and feminine.
Yep.
In order to get a well balanced child. And you can always tell a woman who's been raised by a father, she'll have better boundaries than a woman who has not. And
that's me, right? I had no boundaries. I didn't know boundaries, right? Because my mom didn't have boundaries with me. It was, you just listen to me, you do what I tell you to do, and I didn't get a say. And that's what a lot of these moms are doing, is that they are torturing their children by not allowing them to have that free will.
Fathers are responsible for the boundary setting. They are. Even within the marriage, because women are wanting to do to make people feel good, and this is necessary. And this goes back to our primary roles as father and mother, because you need to make that child feel comfortable, because if you don't, the child will die. Right? Yeah. Like the children, if you make a child not have love, even though you feed it and so forth, a young baby, that baby will die. Right? So and unfortunately, they've done nasty experiments where they just fed the child and stuff like that, and they didn't touch it or any kind of thing, and the kids died. Right? Yeah. So we know that women have to be wired that way, otherwise our kids would die. So that's necessary.
Well, that happened with the Native Americans when they started stealing the Native kids from their parents and putting them in these boarding schools. A lot of these kids died because it was unnatural for them, and they were separated from their families, and that emotional distress can cause cancers and other diseases in the body, which then kill you off. And people aren't aware of how much the physical affects the emotional body, because we have the mental and the physical, and then we have the spiritual, which is your emotions. And those emotions are just as important as the physical, and they all work together as a 3-in-1, in one human being. And when you destroy any of those, then you're destroying humanity.
Yes, we'll continue the conversation. We'll take a commercial break.
Okay.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillow is only $14.98. Queens, $18.98. King size, only $1 more. Body pillows, $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our spring percale Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free. You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good.
Wow. Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So at the end of the day, I mean, when we're looking at what's happening here, the people who are behind this, they understand what was going on, and kind of circling back to what Gina was saying about putting people on the street. When you look at how all of these things and attacking the families have done these things. Now you're looking at the rise of when the money's drying up, what are women going to do? And I see, let's talk to women that talk about when they're going through these situations with their family courts, they're like, well, I want to go and do OnlyFans because I need to make money because they can't get money anywhere. And I've had women that came and said this to me, and they said, this is what they are looking for because
Yeah.
when you do this, then it'll be used against you in court. It'll make it harder for you to get your kids. It'll push your situation even further and get you into a system of slavery. And
Yeah.
you talked about when your ex went away. You said he was in the military, right?
Yep.
And then you ended up staying with your father to help you out in the situation. That was a smart thing to do because
I'm lucky I have a dad who allows that because a lot of even my biological dad was like, what are you doing? You should get your own place. It's like, I've tried. As a single mom, I was a laborer, so I made really good money. And I had a car payment. I had a phone bill I had to pay. I had daycare, which is $1,100 a month I was paying by myself. I got no child support. I mean, that's rent right there. $1,100 for daycare is rent. I didn't have another income. I had my dad. They're thankful my dad gives me a place to live rent free. He has the space. Why wouldn't he want to help me out? But you see so many parents these days who are like, oh, you better just figure it out. You have to figure it out yourself because society is telling them to do that. We should have more parents helping their children out, especially parents like single moms. You know, you should have, and not every parent can. Like my mom couldn't physically, she wouldn't be able to help me financially. But like I just noticing that people will bash single moms for getting help. And again, I'm so thankful that my dad gave me a place to live where he accepted me and has allowed us to live here. And then because of that, she's had that male role figure for her here growing up where, yeah, she's an absent father, but she still has that male role helping to raise her. And I appreciate that for my dad doing that.
Yes, because I mean, you look at this and without having that help, you're going to be in a bad situation. And this is actually, it favors predators in order to do this, right? And you see this happening over and over again. Because I was looking at this stuff and this girl here, she talks about some of the stuff that she has. And she was married to a man that was in the military. And they had a kid. When he went away, she couldn't afford to feed her kids and was getting assistance for the military people, which is absolutely shameful. If you're going to go and so forth and do these things and serve your country, you can't feed your kids is a problem. Then she gets into OnlyFans and so forth. But then she ends up having some issues. But you can listen to what she's saying, and you can sit down and see that if there were proper supports being given, especially for people who are having families that are serving their country, a lot of these things would have been avoided, right? And then she's looking for. Then when you get into those situations, it becomes extremely difficult for you then to form a relationship. Now, we'll pull up one clip here where she's talking, and you can see what she's asking for. And I just want your thoughts on this.
So I kind of want to get a new assistant after my last one did not work out. But at the same time, I'm like, these are things like what I need an assistant to do. You got to be the man around my crib. Like if I need you to change my air filters, I need you to get up on that ladder. If I need something built, I need you to build it. Like those are the things I'm really bad at. But then also like, I need you to help me with the dishes when I need it.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. what she's describing is looking for a life partner. There's another one
Yeah, I
that
think
we saw this one
you
before.
showed that to me before. Yeah.
We'll pull up the other one, but
Okay.
we'll watch the other one, but you'll see some of the things that you're seeing that you can identify things that were going on. So let's look at this one here.
So this is just like a random little life update. I need to figure out how to simplify my life. What can I do? Also, my nails so cute. I have too many things going on. I am a full-time single parent with 2 kids, 2 small kids. I run a business. I'm trying to start another business. I have a puppy. I have so much to clean. It's just like, how can I do all of my appointments to maintain my looks? Do all the things to maintain my daughter's school, my daughter's care, make enough time for them, but also clean the house, keep my car clean, have time to do all the admin stuff for my business, all the messages every single day, let alone find time to do content. I don't have time for any collabs at all with anyone. I have no dating life, no social life. I have zero social life. I don't do anything besides be with my kids and work. That's my entire life, which I love being with my kids all the time and I love making money, but I like don't, how do I have to, I just don't know what I can simplify, what I can take out, but I need to figure out how to do it because I just don't have enough time.
I think that goes for any job. Like I said, I don't judge her for what her profession is. I think that goes for any mom, is that we struggle to go to work and then also raise our kids. It's too much for a mom to do mentally, emotionally, all these things. I know when I was working full time, I had a hard time connecting with my kid. Like I would run and hide from her because I was like, oh, it was too much for me to, and I only have one, I only had one. And maybe it is harder having one because you have to occupy them more and entertain them more. If they had siblings, they could play with each other. But again, I feel for moms like that, whatever their profession is, it is hard to raise kids and to have to work, and good for her for making a lot of money, I guess, whatever she's doing. Again, I don't judge her profession. It's just not doable for moms to work and to raise kids and to do all that. And then because of her profession, not all men will accept her profession. So now her trying to find a life partner, that is damaging for her. And that might be damaging for her children as well.
Yes. I'm actually going to look for this one clip here that I want to bring up that we should look at, because I mean, it's not just the effects on the person, but the effects on the people around them. And that's where we have to have this. And like, I mean, oh, there you go. Because there's a brother and sister, they're on there quite often. And I mean, just going to kind of pull up what they say and how it affects the brother, because this is where how things affect men and women are very different. And this is where a lot of the times this is not being told. And the woman that's dealing with this, she's not thinking about it in the moment. She's not. And they see this happening again and again. But the men who are setting these things up, they understand these things very well.
I usually ask my brother like once a month, like what's the craziest story that he has because his sister has an OnlyFans. So I'm gonna call him right now. I don't know, is he in school? What time is it? School. Let's see here. I released some crazy shit on my OnlyFans, so let's see what the updated story is. Hey, what's the craziest story you have this month about me having an OnlyFans? Like, what's the craziest thing that's happened to you?
Okay, so this random kid I don't even know came up to me and he was like, "Is this your sister?" and showed me a picture.
Okay, all right.
Wait.
Yeah, you showed me that last time too, and that is awful that people are doing that to them like that.
Yes, but when they put the woman in there in duress, and the reason why I kind of brought that up is because it's relevant to the situation. She's thinking about making money. She's not thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
The people who are creating these frameworks for this are doing this, right? And then you have people that when you're doing this, it then they end up getting they get groomed, especially when you're seeing, like, because her brother's like 13 or 14 or something like that. Maybe he's 15 or 16. Like he's a teenager somewhere in that area. So you get them watching that. Then what? Right? You're creating the breakdown of a society when you're allowing these kinds of things to happen, and then you bring in a lot of the people now going younger and younger. Like we watched the one clip of the woman talking about how there's the choking and all of that kind of stuff that are happening because these young boys are being wired this way. When you look at what the family courts are doing by destroying the families, they're setting the stage for things like this.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
are. And creating single parent families. And then, you know, you look at the women that they can't afford to get food, they can't feed their families, it's harder for them to find work and so forth, right? And then
Well,
you have sorry,
go ahead, go ahead.
No,
The one thing I do appreciate about the OnlyFans thing is that back then you still had moms who were trying to feed their kids, and instead of being on the internet where they're safe, they were out doing actual physical favors for men in situations where it made it more dangerous for them, where they were actually forced to do physical favors, and they're not getting paid as much as OnlyFans is paying them. So if anything, OnlyFans for me, like, even though I may not, and I said I don't agree, because again, I think I told you before that I had thought about making one. Like that could set me and my daughter free. We could buy a camper van, we can go live freely, we can go travel the world, and I can just do a few risque photos. And for mine, I more just wanted to do a very natural nature, not any porn or anything. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that in society, like, nothing's affordable these days. So people are going to do whatever they can to make money, whether it's selling their souls or whatever. And no matter what profession you have, you're selling your soul. I mean, you're selling your time for money. And for me as a laborer, I was selling my time for money. I was risking my life at a job that didn't care about me. I mean, I had a few situations where I put my life in the line at my job for what? I wasn't making as much as a person on OnlyFans, you know? And I think that's the problem that we're seeing in society, is that, again, we're not living in a livable way. So it is creating the avenue for more women, and men are also creating OnlyFans. There's been lots of successful men on OnlyFans as well, not just women, who that's what they choose themselves. Like, I'm not here to judge them on what they choose. I wish there was another way where we wouldn't have to do things like this, because yeah, you are exposing, when people like that girl's brother, he's being now exposed to his naked sister, right? And that is a sad thing to have to go through, and what kind of trauma is that creating for him? But we also can't blame that female either, because what kind of family did she grow up in? What made her decide to do that? There's so many questions that we have to ask in those situations, you know?
sorry. Did I show you the clip about where the woman talks about using porn as a teaching tool? Did I show you that one before?
I don't know if you did, but I know I've mentioned that before, where I believe that porn can be used as a teaching tool, like for people who might need a little more creativity in the bedroom. I have said that before myself, so you could let's watch the clip and see what I think about it.
Yeah, okay, let's bring that up.
Interviewed about you, it kind of struck me about how you are very much about empowering other women, and you're not that kind of, because there's a lot of girls in this business that are super competitive and really like to put each other down, and you're definitely somebody who seems to really seek to unify the industry, which I think is really great. And I felt that was very much reflected in what Asa was saying about you.
Thank you.
So what are your views on that?
Well, I feel like we really need to be unified. We need to be part of a community, and we're already so maligned and hated by the outside world. Well, not all aspects, but there's so much shame in our society when it comes to sex. And when you commodify sex, and when you are empowered and use your own body in whatever way that you want, if you sell sex in whatever form, you're going to be maligned even further than if you're just expressing your sexuality without commodifying it. And that's another reason why I love shows like AVN, because it's an opportunity for us to celebrate each other and celebrate our industry and the good that we do for ourselves and for the community. Because if we don't celebrate us, who's going to?
Yeah.
Everybody loves to watch porn,
but nobody wants to admit it.
Yeah. So, and nobody's going to fight for us but us.
Right.
So that's why I feel like community is so important. And it's just part of my history as well. Like, coming into the porn industry, being in this adult community with like-minded peers and sex-positive people, it's the first time in my life where I felt like I can truly be myself, where I've truly felt accepted as the sexual being that I am, and supported in the sex that I want to have. And I was not supported.
That wasn't the correct clip, but we can discuss that anyway. The other one, I found the one that I actually wanted to bring up, and I'll bring it up. But that she talks about some of the things that she had that were positive experiences out of it. And I'm not going to sit down and say that someone isn't going to get something out, but this is the one thing that I wanted to bring up. And like, I respect this woman. She's a very smart woman, and so forth. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with what she's doing, and the reasons why isn't because of what most people think. It's because what she's doing and what she's thinking of to do something, she's not seeing the outcome of it that men would see that they were wanting this to see. Because I'm not sitting down and saying every man that's doing this, but there are people who understand what's going on and they want these kinds of outcomes. And we'll listen to what she says here, and I'll explain from a man's perspective what's going on here when I hear this.
Yeah, it's been really incredible to see women like you taking, this message and using, porn as a platform for it, which is just so different. I mean, porn before was always, this dirty, seedy underbelly of media, and, it was just to, get guys hard and that's it. But now it's like, it's become so much more complex, and there's a message behind it now. And it's just like, it's evolved into something so much bigger than just porn. And it's been such an exciting thing to witness.
Yeah. And I mean, pretty much everybody watches porn. So it is actually a very powerful platform.
Yes.
And it's also powerful because when people are watching porn, they're often masturbating, and when you're masturbating and you receive messages when you're in that pleasure zone, it's a it can kind of seep in, and
because it is an intimate, vulnerable time, right?
Yes.
I mean, people always privately, well, not everybody, but you know what I'm saying? It's like a private moment where you lock your bedroom door and you put on headphones or whatever, your roommates hear, God forbid, your mom to walk in or something like that. So it is this private, intimate moment. So yeah, I could see how it is this vulnerable time that you could be, giving people not only pleasure, but, I don't want to say teaching them a morality lesson, but there's almost something to that there.
The way I see it is more giving them the opportunity to think of, giving the opportunity to see different ways of being, or different ways of exploring their sexuality, different ways of experiencing the world, different ways of interacting with people. So even if it's for example, I've had fans that have been following me since 2003, fans that, just started following me because they like big breasts, never expecting that I would do a trans scene. And now, because they've followed me through this time, they may have never expected to enjoy watching a trans scene themselves, but because they're my fan, they've committed to watching the movie, and then suddenly they watch it and, wow, they're exposed to a different, a different kind of sex that they end up enjoying. I like that there's this, in that vulnerable space where you're masturbating, you're open to new ideas, and it's in the privacy mostly of your own home. And so, yeah, I like being exposed to myself. I like being exposed to different ideas and different ways of being, and I hope that my fans do too.
Have you had any feedback from any of your fans who've said, before I would have never watched a trans scene, or I would have never watched a BBW scene or something like that, but then I've watched because you were in it, and I've found that maybe that's something I could be into.
Yes. I've had a lot of feedback like that.
That's got to be kind of an amazing experience to feel like.
Okay, so I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
So the thing I will say is that I do appreciate that, right, it opens the door for other stuff. I did have a partner one time who said he watched a scene that went a little too far and he had to get out from it, and he felt very disturbed by it afterwards with himself. That's his own self-reflection to go off of. If he is questioning sexuality, that's on him. If people are questioning their sexuality, that's on him. I support everyone's lifestyles, whatever they choose. As long as they're happy, I support whatever people want to do. It does not affect my life. She is opening the door for other people to see things that maybe they may not have before, but that is all on them that's their life. You know what I mean? I'm just not one to judge or to shame people for the way they're living or what they're doing. I understand why people find it uncomfortable, or how it could be a slippery slope into opening doors for things like that. But that's all on them, that they have to overcome and figure out in their own lives. I didn't hear you.
When I'm discussing this, this has nothing to do with these women as a person. Like,
Yeah.
but what I'm explaining is what actually is happening. What she's
Yeah.
describing is classical conditioning, right? Like
Mhm.
Pavlov with the dogs, where they had
Mhm.
the food and rang the bell. This is what's happening. And this
Mhm.
is what she's describing. This is how they groom people. This is
Mhm.
what this is, and I don't think that she realizes what is actually taking place. She's doing it for a what she is saying is expressing is a right motive. But when you start doing these things, they have catastrophic effects because men are wired very differently than women, and we're extremely visual. And every person knows that if you can't destroy a man, you send a woman to do it. And this is
Mhm.
where you'll see the best of men get ensnared by women. This is the weakness that they have. So now, in this time, and she's not the one who's thinking of this, someone else is. But
Mhm.
she's being put in this position to exploit the men that are in those vulnerable positions to move their moral compass over. And
Mhm.
in doing things, when you begin to subvert people's conscious minds and wills, they will build inner resentment and it'll cause internal conflict unbeknownst to the people. This is why when you bypass people's conscious decisions to do things by grooming them, they end up having problems. And we see this happening again in schools. And so while
Well,
you're
offices too.
what?
I mean, for doctor, I mean, where I see the grooming happening is in schools, yes, because you have, again, you have a community of kids who are coming together and they are watching porn together. I know I did with my friends when I was younger. But for me, at 11 years old, I was in the pediatrician's office where I was forced to lay on the crinkly white papers, right? And
Yes.
a male doctor put his hands, I mean, I was told that I had to allow him to put his hands in my vagina
Yes.
child. And that was very, and I didn't realize how much that affected me until recently. I mean, I'm forced to have a stranger who I'm told not to let anyone touch my body by my parents, right? No, don't let
Yes.
anyone touch you, whatever. And then I'm being told by the person that cares about me the most and loves me the most while she's in my head saying it's okay, it'll be over soon, knowing I'm uncomfortable. Having a man do this to me where I don't know why this is happening. There is no reason for to be doing this. For your safety was the same line that was used by the Nazis. But what kind of psychological damage did that cause to me? Now I feel like I have to people please people and just let people touch me because I'm told that I just,
Yes.
you know.
So now, but like so now taking that experience, you apply this to
Yeah.
men, especially a young man who now
Mhm.
begins to see this, and
Yeah.
it's bad enough for an older person, but for a
Mhm.
younger person, you've just began to finish them, and then they're going to start sliding down that slippery slope a lot
Mhm.
faster. And
Yeah.
when you open them up to so many different things, now he's got not only that woman, but then that man that's imprinted in his mind, and then it's going to cause then his appetite for things become needs to have more and more and more. And this is the issue that I have is that okay, if people when they were doing it and it was on a limited scale, it was fine. But now this is out into the open where anybody who kids at the age of 9 years old are watching this. How do you
Mhm.
contain this? They don't like how you said that somebody said that went too far. How does a
Mhm.
child know that this is going too far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And this is where these platforms have now made this en masse in a way that it's never happened before. So we're
Mhm.
seeing when children are, and even people within the industry that are talking about this, they're saying children are consuming this. So
Mhm.
how do you deal with that? Right? Because if you're an adult and you want to subject yourself to that, that's your prerogative. Whether I like it or not, that's your prerogative. My issue
Mhm.
is this thing is all over the internet and children are
Mhm.
accessing this and they have no way of dealing with it. So when you see things like this, that those children, like the women are talking about, the boys are going to start harming the girls and acting out what they're seeing from young.
Yeah.
Do you want that happening to the children? Like
I think
you
it all
don't.
comes down to household. I think it all comes down to household too, how you're raising your kids and what you're allowing him to, again, it goes back to these public school systems. I was corrupted because of the public school system. I was corrupted because the people I was hanging out with in my neighborhood or whatever else, the things that they were doing in their house, the parents weren't around. Even my daughter has, she's an older friend, and I have, my daughter's very curious. Again, I think I told you this before. She's very curious about the opposite gender because she doesn't have a father. She's never really seen a man naked. She wants to know what a penis looks like. She knows that men have a different body part. And so I had to find a very scientific photo, right, to show her what a penis looks like because she was curious. And I'm not going to lie to her. And I'd rather me show her a very healthy photo than her going to search for it and then finding something that's going to corrupt her mind. And so I think that's where we're seeing an issue is that, again, we should go back to homeschooling our kids. We need to stop shaming nakedness. We need to stop shaming sex. And when kids have questions, we need to start being more honest with them because when we're not honest with our children out of our own fears that, oh, they're too young, they shouldn't know what that is yet. If they have natural questions, we should be answering those honestly so they're not going out and searching on the internet for stuff because that's when their minds are corrupted by the internet and the things they're going to find on there. I can't hear you.
We have to answer and talk about these things. Yes, we do. One of the things I will say is that we also have to restrict children's access to things that they can't control. Like, because men are the ones that have to be the ones to set boundaries. They're the ones that need to teach, and they're the ones who help create a safe society. And that is based on their ability to create boundaries. When you see things that push boundaries and blur them very quickly in the minds of young boys that are forming, they will not be able to create proper boundaries. When you can't create proper boundaries, that means even the man can't create the proper boundaries within himself. If he can't create the proper boundaries within himself, he will act out. Women turn internally when they're having issues. Men act out externally.
Yeah.
So while it may have a different effect on a woman, when you subject young boys to this, you're creating men that are going to destroy women. You don't want that. And this is where I'm looking at it from cause to effect. I'm not telling her about what, she's terrible for what she's doing. I'm saying this is what the effect of what's going to happen when especially a young child, because an adult, I can't tell them what they can and can't do, but a child will be damaged from this and they will act out. Like, I understand of being exposed to things like this when I was younger and then at a point that I didn't. And it took an insane amount of work to do this. And a lot of men cannot do this. And this is why we have the problems that we have. I understand from experience what this is like and having to restore boundaries in order to navigate and the effect that it's going to have on a young man. And so we want a society to be better. We need to have our men to be able to make the right boundaries so they can protect the women in their lives. Because if they don't protect the women in their lives and their children, we're going to have a lot of problems. And this is more of a functional of cause to effect rather than I have no issue with any of those women as people. I don't.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's okay to have that. I know for me, when I was super Christian, I had gay friends, when I went to cosmetology school, I had friends in high school that were gay. And when I became a Christian, I became very much like, I love them, but I don't support their lifestyles. And now it makes me sad that I was like that. It makes me very sad that I was like, in that judgmental face. It's like, if they're happy, then why can't we be happy? Not everyone's meant to have kids. Not everyone's meant to have a family. Some people are meant to come here just to live their lives how they want, and they deal with their own consequences. So whatever actions they do, they have to deal with those consequences, right? Just like I had to deal with the consequences of my past as well. And it made me change my behavior. So I'm not stuck in that type of lifestyle, or I'm not stuck in that type of mindset. I had to heal myself. We're all responsible for ourselves and healing ourselves. And again, whenever people choose their lives, whatever they choose they want to watch, or they choose they want to do with their lives, they want to be in porn, they want to do acting, they want to go work at a slave job, whatever they want to do, everyone has to take accountability for themselves.
Well, I understand. I'm not saying that that we should stop people from making the choices. People are free to choose their choices, but those choices come along with consequences. And when the consequences of your choices are affecting other people and destroying other people's children, that's where your liberty has to get restricted, because my liberty ends at you or another person. I can't do something that's going to destroy you without consequence, because I can't come in and say I'm going to take your money. I can't come in and say I'm going to destroy your children by my actions, because that is problematic. If you want to do something for yourself, that's fine. But when you start harming other people, that becomes an issue. And this is where it comes in, where developing minds can't do that. They have an obligation and a responsibility, and everybody in that industry, to make sure that that stuff doesn't go into the hands of children. They do.
But
And
it's I
the
don't
platform,
feel. Oh, go ahead.
the platforms that are hosting this, they're also responsible. Everybody has a degree of responsibility to make sure that gets in that doesn't end in the hands of children. They do. And they have to understand that this is something, a consequence of what I do. It is, right?
I
It
don't
help.
think anyone goes into porn though thinking that, oh, kids are going to see my content. They're doing it for adults, right? And it is sad that, again, as a child, I was exposed to porn too young. I do feel like I was. But it's also a part of my story, and it helped me overcome a lot of stuff by having to get out of that, because I did used to watch it a lot, especially in my early 20s. I didn't have, whatever, we all have things we needs, right? And that did help me, right, in my mind, where I needed something to help me along, and that is what it is. Even as a child, I know this is probably TMI for people, but this is the truth. This is science. No one taught me how to masturbate at 5 years old. I started masturbating at 5 years old. I know that's probably TMI for people, but that is the truth. And again, as a child, I didn't have the sexual fantasies. I don't want to share what my mind was that, because it's embarrassing, but I had other things that as a child turned me on, and it wasn't sexual. It was other stuff that made me think that, whatever. And so again, when it comes to these people who are in this industry, I don't think, again, they're not advertising to children. And it is unfortunate that children are being exposed, but that's the internet. We have the internet now. And so if you want to ban all that, you have to ban the internet. And how can we do that?
That's not what I'm saying. We're actually, the difference in what we're having is the differences in the way that men and women process situations. Because men see these things before they're happening. This is the way that we're designed. We have to look at the consequences down the road so that we can make decisions to help protect our families. This is so women are not designed to do the same role. They come to the conclusions, but they generally will come to them after. They don't see, because a man's going to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to go and do this. I look at this. There's a potential that this is going to happen, and I have to accept that some people are going to do this, even though it shouldn't happen. I know that people are going to do it wrong, and it's going to get out there, and they have to analyze the risk and then decide whether that risk is acceptable or not. A woman's like, okay, I'm going to go and do this, and that, these things should happen. They happen. They're like, oh, I didn't want that to happen. But a man goes in understanding and looking that these are all potential things to happen, and that what steps do I need to take to mitigate it? And these are the differences of why you have the different perspectives, and they're both necessary, but you have to have them working together to put in the proper controls. So if people are going to go and do things, that you don't get it into the places of the hands of children. Now, the people who are doing a lot of these platforms, like, for example, like Pornhub and all of these other places, they don't care. And in fact, they want this to get out, because they're having content of people getting raped and all these kinds of things. And so they want to create a society that are going to be more slaves, where the women aren't the ones that are saying that, like, from the conversation that these two women had, this is not what their intent was, right? Going based on what they're talking about. They're talking about doing something that they felt was positive. But the guys who created the content to make sure that it got out, they're not doing it for a positive reason. And so we have to look at the brakes being put on for the people who are knowingly doing something that is wrong. And people will take it out on the women there that, like, they're the masterminds behind it, and they're not. The guys with the content and the platform that are ensuring this to get into the hands of children are the ones that are mostly responsible. But these girls also should take stock, and some of them are, and I've heard them talk about it, that they want to make sure that this doesn't get into the hands of children, which is the right approach to take.
I mean, at the end of the day, we like to hope that everyone has good intentions, right? Some people don't have good intentions. That's just what we found out in life, and that we can't. It is what it is. I feel like a lot of people, when they do go into this industry, they're not thinking about necessarily the consequences. They're not going in there. They're going there for their own reasons. And again, they don't want it in the hands of kids. They're not thinking that this is going to get in the hands of kids. And they probably are mortified when they realize that is happening, because they would hope that things are secure. Like those sites tell you it's secure, right? It's going to be secure. And then now women are finding out that it's not as secure as they were told it was. And they are having their pictures leaked. And now family members are seeing things. And now other people are seeing things. And that is sad for those people who went in there with a vulnerable state of mind to try to better their future financially. And now they are having the consequences of that. And they have to deal with their own consequences. That's what they have to overcome,
Yes, and this is why I'm saying the men that encourage them, they understand these consequences. This is what I'm saying. Men understand these things. And this is why when you're looking at the exploitation, and I see this happening a lot, they're putting them in situations where they want to be that way. Like going back to what the woman Gina said about creating the circumstances for her to go out on the street. A lot of men are creating the circumstances.
Well, men are like that. Men can say some very awful things. I've heard men say awful things to me. Again,
yes. But they're creating the circumstances for more women to go into these things that they wouldn't have normally did. What we want to do is if a woman wants to do that, that's that and on her own free volition, I can't stop her. But a lot of women are going into these things because of the forces that are being put on them where they cannot survive in other ways. And when you're doing that, that is wrong. That is exploitation. That is a crime. And then you're going to, when they're desperate, then you're going to get them to do things that they normally wouldn't do. And then it just creates a wrong direction for things. And this is why you have to stop exploitation at all costs. Like, I mean, that's a crime. Like, you can't exploit people. That's slavery. These guys want to do that on their own volition under normal circumstances. Everything's fine. Great. But when you make people poor, take away their ability to look after their kids, they're going to become desperate. That's how you. I watch women get pimped for a very long time, and these are the same things that they use to pimp people, and it's disgusting.
It's manipulation.
Well, it's exactly it, and so.
But again, women are also manipulating men too, because I've seen it. I've seen my own friends manipulate their partners.
Oh yes.
Women that are both very manipulative. It's happening on both ends. Women can process things a lot more than men realize that we can. We can. I think about, because I'm not saying that men don't have psychic visions, but women are more connected, where we can, and that's why women get so jealous and they get so, they create their own fears in their head and they go and blame men for things they're not actually doing because they've created a scenario in their head that's not true. Women are really bad at doing this. So I think women are thinking outside the box a little bit when it comes to that, but they're manipulated into, oh, you can make this much money. We'll do this. It'll be great. Like, these men have this business idea in their head, and they do, like you said, they exploit women, but women have also done that to men too.
Yeah,
so we have to just.
You are correct. Women do exploit men by all means. There's no doubt about that. There's no argument. It's just the manner in which they carry it out is different.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. And so that's why they need to have them come together to work together to fix the situation. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whatever someone's lifestyle is, people can all admit that children should be protected and children should not be exposed to certain things. And so, I mean, I don't have to like what somebody does to accept them as a person. Like, I mean, I don't like everything that I've done. I've made mistakes. So that's neither here nor there. But the fact of the matter is that there are people that are going out and pushing this in the hands of children so that they can destroy our society. Because when children are, for example, when you talk to your children about the sex, you have to make sure that you did it in a manner that was appropriate to their age. You're not going to put them into like violent type pornography and all this kind of stuff because you're going to damage your kid. You know that, right? You're their parent. But these people who are, for example, like Pornhub and all these other places that are doing these things, they're making profit of people getting raped online. And then they're pushing this into the hands of people and children. And like I can sit down and say that those two women, I've never heard them say, "Well, I want this to go in the hands of children and to destroy them." Right?
Yeah.
So they're being used by these
Mhm.
people to put their content in the hands of children that they didn't expect. That's a
Mhm.
problem because that's not
Mhm.
what they signed up for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that this is what I'm trying to get at. Like that's the biggest issue because
Mhm.
what an adult does, I don't have to like it, but they have the right to do it. Child don't has the capacity to do that. Anyway,
Yeah.
closing thoughts because we've been going on this, but thank you for your perspective. I mean, I get to learn a lot from our conversations.
Yeah. Again, I appreciate the conversations that you and I can have, even if we don't agree, and that's the thing is I used to have very strict views on my life and just meeting people and getting to know them and understanding why they do certain things. It's really opened my eyes a lot to why they do certain things. And I appreciate everyone's perspective on stuff. And again, even if I might not agree with it, I respect people's life choices. And I'm just here. I know for me as a human, I'm just here to love and accept everybody as is. But also to set my boundaries too, right? If something makes me feel uncomfortable, then I have to set that boundary and I have to excuse myself from that person's presence if they are crossing my boundaries. But again, I respect everyone's lifestyle, whatever it is, even if I might not agree. And that's all I can do.
I mean, and that's we all have to do our best and work together. We don't have to agree on everything, but we need to agree
Yeah.
that government shouldn't be killing us and people
My
shouldn't.
biggest fight is these courts. My fight is not whoever's on Pornhub, but my biggest fight is what is happening in these courtrooms and these children who are being trafficked through these systems. Because again, my partner's daughters are being molested by their grandfather, and that's my fight. Is that these kids who are being placed with abusive parents? That's where my fight lies, in these courtrooms, and making sure that our children are protected and safe, and with the right parent, not the abusive one.
Yes, and what the courts are doing is actually helping to do what I was describing earlier. Because my oldest daughter, she was drugged and raped, and they put her stuff up online in places like that, and that's kind of
Yes.
stuff that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about that needs
Yeah.
to get dealt with because like, and they're trying to destroy the women so that they will and the men so that the men will do this to the women and the women will be in a more position to accept this and then to push this out to the children that they think that this is acceptable so that they will be wired for this type of thing because there's a system of pedophiles that are running this country and we can't have them happen that and they like I mean
Agree
they
with that.
can't and that's my concern. You want to go after
Yeah.
kids, you want to rape people. Like if people consent to doing that, I don't have to
Yeah.
like it, but it's not my business.
But it's just so
Don't
that's not consensual that we need to be worried about. Absolutely, I agree with that.
and so that this is where companies like this are making a lot of their money, and that drives me. Like I mean, I want to reach through this. I, you get the point. We need to solve problems,
As you
right?
should. As you should be outraged by that. You should be outraged by that. I mean, if your daughter is a victim of that and you know other people's kids are a victim of that, that's something that, yeah, we should be absolutely outraged that people are becoming victims of situations that they didn't consent to. And if it's being placed on sites like that, that is absolutely wrong. We will agree with that all day long.
Yes. And so I'll close here with a prayer, and I'll give you some final thoughts to the audience. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Thank you for the hope you have given me this day. And thank you for the work that's being done by all the people who are standing up. And Lord, I ask of you this day to help the men and the women to come together to protect the children from this wickedness and evil that we're seeing in this country and in this world, that they could have a future and that we can go back to simpler times and that we could have proper families to have a proper government and life in general is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good. So again, I just want to say thank you for having me as a co-host on your podcast and the stories that you share. I think it's very important that we're bringing awareness to the court corruption going on. And I just hope that more people come together and start sharing their stories on what is happening with our court corruption so that way we can fix the system that we're seeing and bring humanity back to love and kindness and respect.
All right, and we will see you again, and we'll be see us again on tomorrow for another podcast. And now I need to get the closing stuff. So We'll see you guys again.